I was at my son's grave comforting my grandchildren when my daughter-in-law leaned in and whispered in my ear, "Now that he's gone, I'm sending you to a home." I thought my life was over, until I discovered my son was hiding a secret. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story to the end and comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. The October wind cut my cheeks as I held my granddaughter Emma's little hand. At 63 years old, I never thought I'd be standing in front of my son Marcus's grave, watching them lower his casket into the cold Minnesota earth. The pain in my chest was so physical it was hard to breathe, like someone had wrapped barbed wire around my lungs. "Grandma, can Dad see us from heaven?" Emma asked, her 7-year-old eyes full of tears. Her older brother Daniel, 11 years old, clung to my other arm, trying to be strong, but trembling like a leaf. "Of course he can, sweetie," I whispered, though my own faith felt as fragile as wet paper. Marcus had been everything to me after his father died 15 years ago. My only son, my partner, my reason for getting up every morning. And now at 42, he was gone from a massive heart attack that nobody saw coming. Juliet, my daughter-in-law, stood on the other side of the children, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Even at the funeral, she managed to look perfect, with her blonde hair styled in an elegant bun and her manicured nails holding a silk handkerchief. At 38, she was everything I never was. Tall, sophisticated, with that cold beauty that intimidates other women. 12 years had passed since Marcus married her, and in all that time our relationship had been cordial but distant. Juliet was always polite to me, but there was something in her green eyes that made me feel like I was a piece of old furniture she tolerated in her perfect house. The pastor finished speaking, and people began to approach to offer their condolences. "I'm so sorry. He's in a better place. He was a good man." All the phrases people say when they don't know what else to say in the face of death. When the last visitor walked away, only the 4 of us remained by the grave. The cemetery workers waited at a distance, giving us a final moment of privacy. Emma was crying silently, and Daniel tried to comfort her, even though his own eyes were red. I knelt by the grave, my knees protesting against the damp ground, and placed my hand on the freshly turned earth. "I love you, my son," I whispered. "I will take care of your children. I promise you." That's when I felt Juliet approach from behind. Her expensive perfume, the one that always gave me a headache, filled my nostrils. She leaned towards me, and for a moment I thought she was going to offer comfort, maybe a hug or words of mutual support in our shared grief. Instead, her lips drew close to my ear, and she whispered with a coldness that froze my blood, "Now that he's gone, I'm putting you in a home, old woman. You have no one left to protect you." The world tilted around me. For a moment, I thought I had misheard, that the grief was playing tricks on my mind. But when I turned to look at her, I saw that small, cruel smile on her lips, an expression I had seen before, but that Marcus always told me I was imagining. "What did you say?" I managed to whisper, though my voice sounded strange as if coming from far away. Juliet had already straightened up and returned to her mask of the grieving widow. "I was just telling her that we'll be in this together, mother-in-law," she said loudly enough for the children to hear. "That we'll take care of each other." Emma looked at me with hopeful eyes. "Right, Grandma? Are we all going to be together?" I couldn't answer. My throat had closed completely. Juliet took the children's hands with that perfect smile she reserved for family photos. "Of course we will, sweetie. Grandma is going to come live with us, temporarily." The way she said that last word made me shudder. There was a hidden promise in it, a threat that only I had heard. Over the next few days, as I helped with the funeral arrangements and tried to process my grief, Juliet's words repeated in my mind like a macabre song. "You have no one left to protect you," as if Marcus had been the only thing standing between her and some plan she had been hatching. 3 days after the funeral, I was cleaning out Marcus's closet when I found something strange. Deep in one of his drawers, behind a pile of t-shirts, my fingers touched something hard and cold. It was a small key, the kind used for a safety deposit box, tied with a red ribbon to a folded piece of paper. With trembling hands, I unfolded the paper. It was Marcus's handwriting. That messy scrawl I would recognize anywhere. Mom, if you're reading this, it's because something happened to me. Do not trust Juliet. There are things you need to know. The box is at First National Bank box number 347. Sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I love you. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Marcus knew something. He had been preparing for something. But what? And why hadn't he told me anything when he was alive? I hid the key and the note in my purse just as I heard Juliet's footsteps coming up the stairs. When she entered the room, I was folding shirts as if nothing had happened. "Ophelia," she said, with that smooth voice that now made my skin crawl. "We need to talk about the future." I froze, holding one of Marcus's shirts. His scent was still there, that mix of cheap aftershave and laundry detergent that made me want to cry. "The children need stability," she continued, sitting on the bed where she and Marcus had slept for 12 years. "And I need space to process my grief. I've been thinking that maybe it would be best if we found a more appropriate place for you." "A more appropriate place," I repeated, though I knew exactly what she meant. "There are some very nice residences for people your age, places where you can socialize with people of your own generation, where you don't have to worry about cooking or cleaning, where they can take better care of your health." The key in my purse felt heavy like an anchor. "Juliet, this has been my home for 12 years. She sighed as if I were a capricious child who didn't understand adult logic. "Technically, Ophelia, this is my house. Marcus and I bought it together, and now that he's gone—" She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. The message was clear. That night, lying in the guest room that had been my refuge since Marcus's death, I gripped the key in my fist until it dug into my palm. My son had tried to tell me something. He had tried to protect me, even after death. And for the first time since the funeral, I didn't cry from sadness. I cried from rage. The lawyer's office. William Hartman smelled of old leather and cold coffee. 2 days after the funeral, I sat in a green velvet chair that had seen better decades, watching Juliet settle elegantly into the chair next to mine. She wore a navy blue dress with pearls, the kind of outfit that screamed respectability and class. I had worn my only black suit, the same one I'd worn to my husband's funeral 15 years ago. The children had stayed home with Juliet's sister Patricia, who had flown in from California to help during this difficult time. Patricia was a younger version of Juliet, with the same perfect smile and the same way of looking at me like I was a problem that needed to be solved. Mr. Hartman was a man in his 60s, with gray hair and glasses that constantly slid down his nose. He had known Marcus since he was a boy, and he had drafted his will just 6 months ago. That had surprised me when Juliet mentioned it. Why would Marcus have updated his will so recently? "Well, ladies," Hartman began, adjusting his glasses and opening a thick folder. "I am very sorry for your loss. Marcus was a good man, a good client. He always cared about his family's well-being." Juliet managed to make her eyes fill with tears at the exact right moment. "He was the best husband and father. He just wanted to make sure we were well taken care of." I kept my mouth shut, but my hands were shaking slightly. The key I had found was hidden in my purse, and I could still feel its weight like a rock. Hartman cleared his throat and began to read. "I, Marcus David Henley, being of sound mind and body, declare this to be my last will and testament." The first parts were standard: funeral arrangements, minor provisions, some small gifts to charities. But then we got to the part that mattered. "To my beloved wife, Juliet Marie Henley, I leave the family home located at 1234 Maple Street, along with all furniture and belongings contained within. I also leave her my savings account at First National Bank, which at the time of this writing contains approximately $45,000, as well as my life insurance policy in the amount of $200,000. I felt as if someone had hit me in the stomach with a hammer. Juliet squeezed my hand in a way that looked comforting to the lawyer, but her nails dug into my skin. "To my dear mother, Ophelia Henley, Hartman continued, and my heart sped up for a moment. I leave her my carpentry tools and my book collection with the wish that she finds comfort in the memories these items contain. That was it. Tools and books. After 35 years of raising Marcus as a single mother, after working double shifts at the textile mill to pay for his college, after taking care of him when he was sick, after helping him get his first job, after being the only family he had for 15 years before he met Juliet. Tools and books. Of course, Hartman added, looking at me over his glasses. Marcus did express his desire that Juliet take care of you, Ophelia. It's not a legal mandate, but it was important to him that you knew he expected his wife to treat you like family. Juliet let out a shaky breath that sounded completely convincing. Of course I will. Ophelia is like a mother to me. We would never leave her alone. Liar. The word echoed in my mind so loudly, I was afraid I had said it out loud. Hartman kept reading some minor details, but I wasn't listening anymore. My mind was spinning. Marcus had left me practically nothing. Everything. The money, the house. It all went to Juliet, and she had already made it crystal clear what she planned to do with me. Are there any questions? Hartman asked, closing the folder. Just one, I said, finding my voice for the first time since we'd arrived. Did Marcus mention anything about a safety deposit box? Hartman frowned and checked his papers. No. There's nothing mentioned about a safety deposit box in the will. Why do you ask? Juliet looked at me with eyes that seemed concerned, but held a flash of something else. Suspicion, irritation. I thought maybe he had kept some important things, family photos, things like that. Well, Hartman said, if such a box exists, it would technically be part of the assets that passed to Juliet, unless he specifically put someone else's name on the account. My heart sank. If Marcus had put something important in that box, it now legally belonged to Juliet. Don't worry, mother-in-law, Juliet said, with that sweet smile that now made me nauseous. If Marcus kept anything special, of course, we'll share it. We're family. We left the office in silence. In the parking lot, Juliet turned to me, her expression having lost all pretense of sweetness. I hope you understand your situation now, Ophelia. Well, I guess I just hoped you'd be smart enough to know your place now. My place, I repeated, though my voice sounded weak even to me. Look, I don't want to be cruel. Marcus isn't here to see it, so we can handle this like civilized adults. I've been researching some very nice residences, places where you can have your own room, your meals prepared, activities with other people your age. It will be better for you than being alone all day in a big empty house. The children, I started. The children have me. And frankly, Ophelia, they're at an age where they need stability, not constant reminders of their loss. Seeing you every day, seeing you cry, it's not healthy for them. Every word was like a slap. She was painting me as a burden, as someone who would harm the children just by existing. Besides, she continued, getting into her silver BMW, I've been reviewing Marcus's finances. Things are tighter than I thought. Keeping an extra person in the house, well, it's just not practical. She drove away, leaving me standing alone in the parking lot, holding the keys to my old Honda and a crushing weight in my chest. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, cooling in my hands. The house was silent, except for the ticking of the wall clock, the same clock I had given Marcus for his first house. I took the key from my purse and studied it under the lamp. It was small silver with the number 347 engraved on one side. On the other side, barely visible, were the initials. O. Ophelia Henley. My heart started beating faster. Hartman had said that if the box was in someone else's name, it wouldn't be part of Marcus's assets. Was it possible Marcus had put my name on that box? I checked the note one more time. Do not trust Juliet. There are things you need to know. What things? What had Marcus discovered about his wife that he hadn't told me when he was alive? The next day, as soon as Juliet left for the salon and the children were at school, I drove to the First National Bank. My heart was pounding so loudly, I was sure everyone in the bank could hear it. The safety deposit box attendant, a young woman with a kind smile, checked the number. Yes, here it is, box number 347. May I see your ID? I handed her my driver's license with trembling hands. She compared it to something on her computer and nodded. Everything is in order, Mrs. Henley. The box is registered to both your name and Marcus Henley's name with right of survivorship. That means it is now entirely yours. My legs almost buckled with relief. Marcus had put my name on the box. Whatever was inside, Juliet couldn't touch it. They led me to a small private viewing room, and when the attendant inserted my key, along with the bank's master key, the box opened with a soft click. Inside was a thick envelope, some documents, and something that made me hold my breath, a small digital voice recorder. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. There were several $1,000s in cash, but that's not what caught my attention. It was a letter handwritten by Marcus, dated just 2 months before his death. "Mom," it began, "if you are reading this, it means my worst fears have come true. I have discovered things about Juliet that have made me question everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I can't talk to you about this while I'm alive because I need more evidence. But if something happens to me, you need to know the truth." My world tilted as I kept reading. Marcus had discovered that Juliet had been lying about many things. She had been going through their family finances. She had been making plans. She had been waiting. But the part that made me physically sick was the last line. "Mom, I think Juliet is waiting for me to die." My hands trembled so much as I read Marcus's letter that I had to put it down on the metal table to continue. The words of my dead son danced before my eyes, each line revealing a reality I had been denying for years. "I've been documenting everything for the last 6 months." The letter continued. "At first, I thought I was being paranoid, but the patterns are too clear to ignore. Juliet has been asking about my life insurance policy, about how much the house is worth, about my retirement plans. She does it casually during normal conversation, but she always comes back to topics of money and inheritance." The air in the small room felt thick, hard to breathe. Marcus had been living with suspicions about his own wife carrying that burden in silence while I thought everything was fine in his marriage. "I found papers hidden in her desk," the letter went on. "She has been researching senior living residences, Mom, 3 months ago, even before I showed any symptoms of heart problems. I also found searches on her computer about inheritance rights for mothers-in-law and how to transfer property after a spouse's death." My stomach clenched. Juliet had been planning to get rid of me long before Marcus's death. Maybe she had even been planning his death. I picked up the digital voice recorder, my fingers barely obeying me. It was small, the size of a USB drive with simple buttons. I pressed play, and Marcus's voice filled the small room, clear and familiar, as if he were sitting right next to me. "Recording number 1. Date August 15th. It's 11:20 at night." That had been just 6 weeks before his death. "Juliet thinks I'm asleep. She's on the phone with someone in the kitchen. I can't hear the whole conversation, but I heard her say, 'When he's gone, the old woman will have to go too. I'm not supporting 2 extra mouths when I only need to support the kids and myself.'" Marcus's voice sounded tired, hurt. My heart broke imagining him there listening to his wife plan a future without him, reducing our existence to mouths to support. Recording number 2, date August 22nd. This time Marcus was whispering, as if afraid of being heard. "Today, Juliet asked me if I had updated my will recently. I told her no, that the last one I made was 5 years ago. She got very insistent, saying I should make sure everything was in order in case something happened to me. When I asked her why she was thinking about that, she laughed and said she just wanted to be prepared, but there was something in her eyes. Mom, something cold." I paused the recording and just sat in the silence. Marcus had been living with this horrible realization about the woman he'd shared his bed with for 12 years, the mother of his children. How had he borne that burden alone? I kept listening. There were 12 recordings in total, documenting conversations, behaviors, small moments that had made Marcus realize his wife was not who he thought she was. Recording number 7, date September 5th. Mom, I hope you never have to hear this, but if you are, it means I couldn't protect you in time. Today I confronted Juliet about her internet searches. At first she denied it. Then she said she was just looking into options for when you get older. But when I asked her why keeping you in our home wasn't an option, she got angry. She yelled at me, something she's never done before, not in front of the kids. She told Emma and Daniel to go to their rooms. Then she told me I was naive if I thought we could support an elderly woman indefinitely. My throat closed. Juliet had shown her true colors to Marcus, but he hadn't been able to tell me. He had been trying to protect me even when he knew I was in danger. Recording number 10, date September 18th. This was just a week before his death. I've made a decision. I'm going to change my will, but not in the way Juliet expects. I've been working with Hartman secretly. The will she knows about isn't the real one. I've created a trust that only activates if certain conditions are met. Mom, if you're listening to this, you need to go see Hartman and tell him the phrase, "Marcus sent me to find the golden key. He'll know what to do." The golden key. I looked at the letter again, and there, on the last page that I hadn't fully read, written in smaller print, "Tell Hartman, Marcus sent me to find the golden key." There is a second will, Mom. One that Juliet never saw. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the papers. Marcus had done more than just document Juliet's intentions. He had created a plan to protect me. Recording number 12, date September 25th. This was the last recording, made just 2 days before his death. I don't feel well, Mom. I've been having chest pains. But every time I mention going to the doctor, Juliet says I'm just stressed from work. Last night she gave me some sleeping medicine I didn't recognize. When I asked what it was, she said the doctor had recommended it for anxiety, but I never told any doctor I had anxiety. The recording cut off abruptly, and the silence that followed was deafening. I sat there in that cold, small room, as the reality settled in my mind like liquid lead. Juliet hadn't just been planning to get rid of me. Had she? Was it possible? Had she been slowly poisoning Marcus? I mechanically put everything back in the box. I had to get home before Juliet returned from the salon. But first I had to make one stop. Hartman's office was busy when I arrived, but when I told his secretary it was urgent and that I had a message from Marcus, she showed me in immediately. "Mrs. Henley," Hartman said, rising from his desk, "I wasn't expecting to see you so soon after—" "Marcus sent me to find the golden key," I interrupted using the exact words my son had written. Hartman's face changed completely. He turned pale and closed his office door behind me. "My God," he murmured. "He said this might happen, but I was praying it wouldn't be necessary. Sit down, Ophelia. There are things you need to know." He went to his safe and pulled out a different folder than the one he had used in our previous meeting. "Marcus came to see me in secret 3 months ago. He was worried about his safety. And yours. He asked me to prepare 2 wills. The one Juliet heard is real, but it's incomplete. There is a clause that activates only under certain circumstances." "What kind of clause?" Hartman opened the folder and showed me documents I had never seen before. "If it can be proven that Juliet had prior knowledge of Marcus's death, or if it can be shown that she planned to harm you after his death, everything changes. The house, the money, the custody of the children, it all reverts." My heart started pounding. "Reverts to who?" "To you, Ophelia. Marcus established that in the event of predatory behavior by Juliet, you would become the legal guardian of the children and the primary heir of all his assets." I couldn't breathe. Marcus had found a way to protect the children and me, even from the grave. "But we need evidence," Hartman continued. "Solid evidence that she planned this, or that she is acting against your interests after his death." I smiled for the first time in days and pulled the voice recorder from my bag. "I think I have exactly what we need." I returned home that night just as Juliet was parking her BMW in the driveway. Her hair was perfect, her nails freshly done, and she had that look of satisfaction I had been seeing more often since the funeral. "Where were you, Ophelia?" she asked casually as we walked in together. "Patricia was asking for you." "I just went to the bank to sort out a few things," I replied, keeping my voice steady. Her eyes sharpened slightly. "What kind of things?" "Nothing important, just closing some old accounts." She seemed satisfied with that answer, but I noticed her eyes follow me as I went upstairs. The kids got home from school an hour later, and during dinner I watched Juliet with new eyes, the way she talked about Marcus as if he had been a saint, the way she included me in conversations just so she could subtly exclude me, how she promised the kids things she knew she wouldn't have to deliver on once I was gone. "Grandma," Emma said while we were eating, "is it true you're going to live somewhere else?" Juliet shot me a warning look. "It's just something we're considering, sweetie, so Grandma can have more friends her own age." "But I don't want you to go, Grandma," Daniel said, 11 years old, but still with that brutal honesty of children. "Adults sometimes have to do things we don't want to do," Juliet said softly, but her words were aimed at me. "It's part of life." That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat in the darkness of my room with Marcus's recordings playing in my ears through small headphones. Every word was another piece of the puzzle. Every revelation was a confirmation of what my gut had been telling me for years. Jewel wrecked. Rest of content truncated. Juliet had been waiting for Marcus to die. And now that he had, she was executing a plan she had been perfecting for months. But what she didn't know was that Marcus had been one step ahead of her the whole time. And now, so was I. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. Keeping up a normal facade while Juliet accelerated her plans to get rid of me required a strength I didn't know I possessed. Every fake smile, every casual conversation about my future, every moment watching her manipulate my grandchildren was like swallowing ground glass. Hartman had been clear. We needed more evidence before we could activate the secret will's clause. Marcus's recordings were powerful, but we needed current proof of Juliet's predatory behavior towards me. We had to let her move forward with her plan while I documented everything. On Thursday morning, Juliet announced at breakfast that she had scheduled tours at 3 senior living residences. "They are really beautiful places, Ophelia," she said while spreading jam on her toast, her voice full of false concern. "One has a lovely garden, another has art classes. I thought we could go see them together this weekend." Emma dropped her spoon in her cereal. "This weekend so soon." "Well, sweetie," Juliet said, stroking Emma's hair, "there's no reason to wait. The sooner we find the perfect place for Grandma, the sooner she can start her new adventure." And Daniel, who had been silent all week, finally spoke up. "Why can't Grandma stay here with us? Dad always said this was her house, too." Juliet's mask slipped for a fraction of a second, and I saw a flash of pure irritation before she recovered her smile. "Daniel, honey, adults sometimes need different kinds of care. Grandma will be much better off with people who can give her the attention she deserves." It was incredible how she could make abandonment sound like an act of love. That afternoon, while Juliet was at a PTA meeting at the school, I decided to search for more evidence in her room. Marcus had mentioned in his recordings that she hid papers in her desk. If I was going to confront her, I needed all the ammunition possible. Her desk was an elegant cherry wood piece with drawers that had small but ornamental locks. The bottom right drawer was locked, but the key was hidden behind a framed photo of her wedding. How appropriate. Inside, I found a folder labeled "Important Documents." My heart sped up as I opened it. The first papers were brochures for the residences she had mentioned. But they weren't the beautiful places she had described. They were basic institutions, places people go when they have no one who cares about them. The prices were cheap, the facilities looked depressing in the photos, and the reviews I had found online were full of complaints about neglect and mistreatment. But that wasn't the worst part. Underneath the brochures was a letter from a different lawyer, not Hartman. It was dated just 1 week after Marcus's funeral. "Dear Mrs. Henley," it said, "as we discussed in our phone consultation, the process for declaring an elderly person incompetent to manage their own affairs can be complex but not impossible. If you can document episodes of confusion, forgetfulness, or irrational behavior, we can proceed with a petition to the court." The words blurred in front of my eyes. Juliet wasn't just planning to put me in a cheap home, she was planning to legally strip me of my ability to make decisions. Once I was declared incompetent, she could take control of any money Marcus might have left me, any medical decisions, every aspect of my life. I kept reading. There was a list handwritten in Juliet's perfect script titled, Examples of Erratic Behavior. Wakes up at night and walks around the house. Found her in the kitchen at 3 a.m. several times. Forgets important conversations. Didn't remember we had agreed to visit residences. Cries for no apparent reason. Excessive emotional episodes since the funeral. Confuses dates and events. Asked if Marcus was coming home for dinner. Paranoid behavior. Accusations that the family doesn't love her. Each example was a cruel distortion of my real grief. Of course I got up at night. I couldn't sleep after losing my son. Of course I cried. I was in mourning. Of course I was confused sometimes. My world had been destroyed. But in the hands of Juliet and an unscrupulous lawyer, my normal grief was being turned into evidence that I couldn't care for myself. There were more papers, a financial assessment of all the assets Marcus had left, calculating exactly how much extra money Juliet would have once I was removed from the equation. She had researched how much it cost to support me, from food to utilities, and had calculated that getting rid of me would save her approximately $500 a month. My life was worth $500 a month to her. The last document took my breath away completely. It was a life insurance policy Marcus had taken out on me 5 years ago, when I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. It was a small policy, only $25,000, but there was a note attached in Juliet's handwriting. Verify beneficiary after legal custody change. She didn't just want to get rid of me. She was planning to profit from my death. I photographed every document with my phone, my hands shaking so badly I had to take several pictures of each page to make sure they were legible. Then I put everything back exactly as I had found it and locked the drawer. I couldn't eat dinner that night. I told Juliet I didn't feel well, which was technically true. I felt physically sick from what I had discovered. "Do you need me to call the doctor?" she asked with a concern that sounded real, but which I now recognized as an act. "You have been acting a little strange lately." There it was. Even with no witnesses, she was planting the seeds for her narrative that I was losing my mind. "No, I'm just tired," I murmured. "Of course you're tired," she said, rubbing my shoulder in a way that was supposed to be comforting. "You've been through so much. It's just another reason why I think a place where they can properly care for you would be for the best." I went to bed early and called Hartman from my cell phone, whispering so no one could hear me. "I have more evidence," I told him. "A lot more. Can you come in tomorrow morning? Early, before she wakes up. I'll be here at 7. At 6:30 the next morning, I snuck out of the house and drove to Hartman's office downtown. The streets were almost empty. Just a few early workers and morning runners. The October air was cold and crisp, but for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel completely hopeless. Hartman was already in his office with a fresh pot of coffee and a serious expression. "Show me what you found," he said without preamble. I showed him the photos on my phone one by one. With each image, his expression grew darker. This is much worse than Marcus feared," he murmured when I finished. "She doesn't just want to get rid of you. She wants to destroy your autonomy completely." "Is it enough to activate the clause?" Hartman leaned back in his chair thinking. "It's enough to prove predatory behavior. Definitely. But there's something else Marcus asked me to tell you if we ever reached this point." He went to his safe again and pulled out a sealed envelope with my name written in Marcus's handwriting. "He asked me to give you this, only if the situation became critical. I think it qualifies now." With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Inside was a different key, larger than the one for the safety deposit box, and a short note. "Mom, if you're reading this, it means everything went just as I feared. This key is for a deposit box at First Security Bank on Oak Avenue, box number 412. There you will find what I really left you. The will Juliet heard only includes a small part of what I have. I love you, and I'm sorry I couldn't protect you while I was alive. Now you can protect yourself." I looked at Hartman in confusion. "Another safety deposit box. He smiled for the first time since I'd met him. Marcus was smarter than any of us, including Juliet, ever imagined. 2 hours later, I was sitting in another safety deposit box viewing room, this time at a different bank across town. Box 412 was much larger than the first one, and when it opened, I held my breath. There were stacks of cash, more than I had ever seen in my life, $100 bills organized in neat bundles. Hartman had come with me and began to count them while I looked through the other contents. $150,000, he announced, in cash. But that wasn't all. There were deeds to properties I never knew Marcus owned. A small house on the outskirts of the city completely paid for, and in my name. Stocks in several companies, certificates of deposit in 3 different banks. "How is this possible?" I whispered. "Where did he get all this?" Hartman smiled. "Your son was a very smart man, Ophelia. For the last 10 years, he had been moving small amounts of money into separate accounts, buying properties in your name, investing quietly, all legal, all properly documented but hidden from Juliet." There was one final letter at the bottom of the box. "Mom, I hope you never have to read this, but if you do, I want you to know I always knew you were the strongest person I'd ever met. You raised a son by yourself. You worked until your hands were calloused. You loved me unconditionally even when I made mistakes. Juliet never understood that. To her, strength means taking what you want no matter who you hurt. Everything in this box is yours. The house on Birchwood Lane has been in your name for 5 years. It's small but beautiful with a garden I know you'll love. The investments will give you enough money to live comfortably for the rest of your life. But more importantly, I want you to know that my children Emma and Daniel need to know the real you. Not the version Juliet has shown them, but the woman who raised me to be a good man. Fight for them, Mom. Fight for yourself. You are not vulnerable anymore. You are not helpless. You now have everything you need to win." When I returned home that afternoon, Juliet was waiting for me in the living room with an expression I had never seen before. Her eyes were cold, calculating, and her smile was completely gone. "Where were you today, Ophelia?" she asked, her voice pure silk over steel. It was time. Marcus had done his part to protect me. Now it was my turn to fight. "I was arranging my future," I replied, and for the first time in weeks, my voice didn't tremble. The silence that followed my words spread through the living room like a thick cobweb. Juliet studied me with those green eyes, which I now recognized as those of a predator sizing up its prey. But something had changed in me over the last few hours. I was no longer the scared, vulnerable widow I had been. "Your future," Juliet repeated slowly, as if testing the words. "I hope that means you're finally being realistic about your situation." I sat in the armchair across from her, the same one Marcus used to read the paper in on Sunday mornings. "Oh, I'm being very realistic, for the first time in a long time." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Good, because I've scheduled the tours of the residences for tomorrow. They're all eager to meet you, especially Golden Years Manor. They have a room available immediately." Golden Years Manor. It had been the worst place in the brochures I found in her desk. A gray building with small windows and reviews that spoke of terrible food and staff who barely spoke English. "How about we talk about what you've really been planning, Juliet?" Her posture changed subtly, straightening, like a cat that has just sensed danger. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Let's talk about the lawyer you consulted about declaring me incompetent. Or your detailed list of my erratic behaviors. Or maybe how you calculated exactly how much money you'd save each month once you got me out of the equation." Juliet's perfect mask crumbled like a house of cards. For a moment, I saw pure panic in her eyes before it was replaced by something far more dangerous. Rage. "You've been going through my things," she said, her voice so low I could barely hear it. "Just like you've been going through mine for years." She stood up abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked the garden where Emma and Daniel were playing after school. Since Marcus's death, they had spent more time outside, as if they instinctively knew the house had become a dangerous place. "You don't know what it's like to raise 2 children alone," she finally said without turning to look at me. "You don't know what it costs to keep a house like this, to pay for private schools, the clothes, the extracurricular activities. Marcus didn't leave me as much as people think. Marcus left you $245,000 between the insurance policy and savings, plus the house, which is worth at least $300,000. That's almost $500,000, Juliet. For most people, that's a fortune." She spun around, and for the first time I saw something like desperation in her expression. "And what happens when that runs out? What about in 10 years and 20 years? The kids will need college. They'll need support until they can stand on their own. I can't afford to support unnecessary mouths." Unnecessary mouths. The words came out of my mouth like poison. "That's what I am to you. You are a 63-year-old woman with no income, no health insurance of your own, nothing to contribute to this family except more expenses." Her voice had become hard, unpretentious. "Marcus felt guilty for you, but I don't have that luxury. I have to be practical." "Practical? Is that why you were giving him medication he didn't recognize in his final weeks?" The color drained completely from her face. "What did you say?" I took the voice recorder from my bag and placed it on the coffee table between us. "Marcus documented everything, Juliet, every suspicious conversation, every strange behavior, every time you gave him medicine he didn't ask for." Her eyes fixed on the device as if it were a venomous snake. He couldn't have." I pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the room clear and accusing. "Last night she gave me some sleeping medicine I didn't recognize. When I asked what it was, she said the doctor had recommended it for anxiety. But I never told any doctor I had anxiety." Juliet sank into a chair as if her legs could no longer hold her. He was stressed. The doctor said stress can cause heart attacks. I was just trying to help him relax." "With what medication?" "Juliet medication that was never prescribed for him." She didn't answer, but I saw the truth in her eyes, the guilt she had been hiding behind her perfect widow's mask. "How long were you planning this?" I asked. "How long were you waiting for Marcus to die?" I didn't want him to die," she whispered, but her voice sounded hollow. I needed things to be easier." "Easier? Killing your husband and getting rid of his mother was your idea of making things easier." "I didn't kill him," she screamed, standing so fast, the chair tipped over behind her. "I just gave him something to sleep better if his heart couldn't handle it. That's not my fault." There it was, the admission I needed. "Do you know what Marcus did before he died, Juliet?" She looked at me with a mix of fear and defiance like a cornered animal. "He changed his will, the real will." Her eyes widened. "That's impossible. I was there when he signed it. Hartman read me every word. He read you one version, the version Marcus wanted you to hear. But there are clauses that only activate under certain circumstances." The front door opened, and we heard Emma and Daniel's voices coming in from school. Juliet looked toward the hallway in panic. "The children," she murmured. "Yes, the children. Let's talk about them." "Mommy!" Emma yelled from the kitchen. "Where are you?" Juliet looked at me with pleading eyes. "Please, Ophelia, whatever you think you know, please don't involve the children in this." "I'm not involving them. You already did when you decided to take their grandmother away and lie to them about the reasons." Emma appeared in the living room doorway, her pink backpack still slung over her small shoulders. "Hi, Grandma. Hi, Mommy. Why do you look so serious?" Juliet composed herself instantly, her maternal mask sliding back into place. "We were just talking about adult things, sweetie. Why don't you go do your homework?" "But I want to stay with you." "Emma," I said softly, "come here with me." The little girl came over and sat next to me on the armchair. Her big brown eyes, so much like Marcus's, looked up at me with that total trust only children can have. "Emma, What would you think if I told you that I'm not going anywhere, that I'm going to stay right here with you and Daniel? Forever. Really? Her eyes lit up. Did Mommy say yes? I looked at Juliet, whose expression had gone from panic to a cold, calculated fury. Your Mommy and I are still talking about it, I said. But I want you to know that no matter what happens, I will always be here for you and Daniel. Do you understand? Emma nodded vigorously and hugged me. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweetie. Daniel appeared in the doorway, taller than his sister, but still with that boyish face that reminded me so much of Marcus at that age. Is everything okay? He asked, with that premature maturity he had developed since his father's death. Everything is going to be fine, I assured him. Go do your homework with Emma. I'll be up to help you in a little while. When the children left, the silence returned to the room, but it had a different weight now. It was no longer the silence of uncertainty, but of a battle that was about to be decided. What do you want? Juliet finally asked, her voice defeated. I want you to call that lawyer and cancel the consultation about declaring me incompetent. I want you to cancel the tours of the residences, and I want you to tell me exactly what you gave Marcus in his final weeks. And if I don't, I took out my phone and opened the recording app. Then this conversation, along with Marcus's recordings and the photographs of your documents, go straight to the police and to Marcus's real lawyer. Her shoulders slumped. It was just Ambien. I was giving him Ambien to sleep. I thought if he slept better, he'd feel better. He'd be less difficult to manage. How much? Just one pill, but sometimes two, if he seemed really anxious. Did you know that Ambien can cause heart problems in people with high blood pressure? Her silence was answer enough. Tomorrow morning, I said, getting up from the armchair, we are going to see Hartman together. He is going to read the entire will, the real one, and you are going to find out exactly what Marcus thought of your plans to get rid of me. Ophelia, please. No. My voice was stronger than it had been in years. The time for please is over. The time for pretending is over. Tomorrow, everything changes. That night, for the first time since the funeral, I slept deeply. Not because the pain of losing Marcus had lessened, but because I finally knew there was a way to honor his memory and protect his children. Marcus had been smarter than any of us had imagined, even Juliet. And tomorrow, she would find that out. Friday morning dawned with one of those soft October rains that makes everything feel like a new beginning. I got up before dawn, not because I couldn't sleep, but because there was too much to do. After so many days of feeling like a victim of circumstance, I finally had control over my own destiny. Juliet had been up all night. I could hear her pacing upstairs, from her bedroom to the bathroom, to the window, back to bed. When I went down to make coffee, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, still in her pajamas with deep dark circles under her eyes and her hair disheveled. Good morning, I said, pouring 2 cups of coffee. She didn't answer. She just looked at me as if I were a ghost that had appeared to haunt her. The children are going to wonder why you look so tired. I continued sitting across from her. I hope you've thought of an explanation. What are you going to tell Hartman? She finally asked, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. The truth, the whole truth. She took a shaky sip of coffee. The children will hate me. The children deserve to know who their mother really is, just like they deserve to know who their father really was, and who I really am. Ophelia, please, we can find another way to handle this. It doesn't have to be so dramatic. I looked at her over my cup. This woman, who had planned to destroy my life with such cold calculation. A part of me, the part that had been raised to be polite and agreeable, wanted to give her an easy way out. But I thought of Marcus, of the recordings where his voice sounded so tired and betrayed, and that part went silent. Dramatic. You mean like giving your husband unprescribed Ambien while planning to have me declared incompetent? She closed her eyes. I didn't know he had heart problems. You knew he had high blood pressure. Marcus told you many times. You knew sleeping pills could be dangerous for him. I just wanted him to sleep better. No, Juliet. You wanted him to be easier to manage. You wanted him to be less able to question your decisions, less able to realize what you were planning. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Why are you guys talking so early?" Juliet composed herself, instantly smiling at her daughter, even though her eyes didn't light up. "Good morning, sweetie. Did you sleep well?" "Yes, but I heard voices." Emma looked at me curiously. "Grandma, why are you up so early?" "Because I have important things to do today, sweetie." Daniel came down a few minutes later, already dressed for school with that efficiency he had developed since Marcus's death. At 11, he already knew adults couldn't always take care of everything. So he had learned to take care of himself. "Is Mommy okay?" he asked quietly, noticing Juliet's pale face. "She looks sick." "Your mom is just tired," I replied, "but she's going to be fine." During breakfast, I watched Juliet interact with the children. Even in her panicked state, she was still a good mother in the basic sense. She made them breakfast, made sure they had everything they needed for school, kissed them before they left. That was the most complicated part of the whole situation. She wasn't completely evil. She was a woman who had made terrible decisions for reasons she believed were justified. But that didn't change what she had done, and it didn't change what I had to do now. Once the children left for school, Juliet and I drove in silence to Hartman's office. She had chosen a conservative blue dress and had carefully applied makeup to hide the dark circles. But nothing could hide the tension in her shoulders or the way her hands trembled slightly. Hartman greeted us in his office with that serious expression he had perfected over decades of handling family secrets and tragedies. He had arranged 3 chairs in front of his desk instead of the 2 we had used last time. "Ladies," he said, closing the door behind us, "I believe it's time to discuss Marcus's true will." Juliet tensed visibly. "The true will." Hartman opened a different folder much thicker than the one he had used before. "Marcus asked me to prepare a document with multiple conditional clauses. What you heard last week, Mrs. Henley, was only the first part." "Multiple clauses?" Juliet had lost her color again. "Marcus's will includes specific provisions that activate if certain conditions are met." Hartman looked at me over his glasses. "Conditions that, based on the evidence Ophelia has provided me, have now been met." I took out the voice recorder and the photographs of Juliet's documents, placing them on Hartman's desk. "I believe you'll find everything you need right there." Hartman reviewed the materials in silence for several minutes. Juliet squirmed in her chair, occasionally opening her mouth as if to say something, then closing it again. "Very well," Hartman said finally. "Based on this evidence, the conditional clauses of Marcus's will are now in effect." "What clauses?" Juliet whispered. Hartman began to read. "In the event that my wife, Juliet Marie Henley, demonstrates predatory behavior towards my mother, Ophelia Henley, including but not limited to, attempts to declare her incompetent without medical justification, plans to place her in institutional care against her will, or any attempt to separate her from my children, then the following provisions take immediate effect." Juliet's breathing had become shallow. "First, legal custody of my minor children. Emma Rose Henley and Daniel Marcus Henley is immediately transferred to Ophelia Henley, who will serve as their legal guardian until they reach the age of majority." "No!" Juliet shot up so abruptly her chair tipped over. "You can't take my children from me." Hartman continued reading as if he hadn't been interrupted. "Second, the family home located at 1234 Maple Street is immediately transferred to Ophelia Henley, along with all contents and associated properties." "This can't be legal," Juliet gasped. "A will can't change after someone dies." "A will can include conditional clauses," Hartman explained patiently. "Marcus included them specifically to protect his mother and children from exactly the behavior you have demonstrated. Third," he continued, 50% of all financial assets, including bank accounts, investments, and life insurance policy benefits, are transferred to Ophelia Henley for the care and maintenance of the minors." Juliet collapsed back into her chair. "He's leaving me with nothing." "Not nothing," Hartman corrected. "You retain 50% of the financial assets, approximately $122,500, enough to start a new life." "How am I supposed to start a new life without my children?" For the first time since we had arrived, I spoke. The same way you planned for me to start a new life at Golden Years Manor. Hartman pulled more documents from the folder. There is an additional clause. If Juliet Marie Henley can demonstrate over a period of 2 years that she has sought professional help for her control and manipulation issues, and if she can demonstrate a genuine change in her behavior, she will be permitted supervised visitation time with the minors. A supervised visitation. Juliet looked at me with a mixture of horror and disbelief. With my own children. Marcus knew that despite everything, Emma and Daniel would need some kind of relationship with their mother, I explained. But he also knew they needed protection from your manipulative tendencies. Juliet sat in silence for several minutes, processing the magnitude of what she had lost. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. How did he know all this before he died? Because he knew you better than you thought, and because he loved me more than you ever understood. Hartman gave us copies of all the documents and explained the next legal steps. Juliet would have 24 hours to move out of the house. Her personal belongings would be packed and delivered at a later date. The children would be informed that afternoon after they returned from school. Can I at least say goodbye to them? Juliet asked, tears finally flowing down her cheeks. You can say goodbye, I replied, but I will be present. That afternoon, Emma and Daniel came home from school as usual, dropping their backpacks in the hallway and running to the kitchen for a snack. They had no idea their lives were about to change forever. Juliet had spent the day packing in silence, filling suitcases with clothes and personal items. She had cried intermittently, but she hadn't tried to argue or negotiate anymore. I think she had finally understood that Marcus had thought of everything. Children, I said as they sat at the table with cookies and milk. I need to talk to you about something very important. Emma looked at me with those big, trusting eyes. Is it about why Mommy has been so sad today? Yes, partly. Daniel, always more perceptive, frowned. Is something bad happening? Something is going to change, I said carefully. But it's not a bad thing. It's something your dad wanted to happen. Over the next hour, I explained everything to them in a way that a 7- and 11-year-old could understand. That their dad had made special plans to take care of them. That I was going to be their guardian now. That their mom needed some time to work through some problems, but that she still loved them. Emma cried mostly because she didn't understand why her mom had to leave. Daniel asked tough questions about why their dad had thought this was necessary. They would both need time to process everything that had happened. Juliet said goodbye to them at the front door, kneeling to hug them one last time. As the custodial mother she had been, she promised she would see them soon, that she was going to work very hard to be a better person, that this wasn't permanent. Why can't you just stay here and be better? Emma asked, clinging to her mother's dress. Juliet looked over Emma's head at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw something like genuine remorse in her eyes. Because sometimes you need to be alone to learn how to be the person you're supposed to be, she answered. Daniel didn't say anything during the goodbye, but when Juliet left, he came over to me and took my hand. Grandma, are we going to be okay? We're going to be more than okay, sweetie. We're going to be happy. That night, after helping the kids with their homework reading to Emma before bed, and having a long talk with Daniel about what this all meant, I sat alone in the living room that was now officially mine. The house felt different, lighter somehow, as if a weight I hadn't realized was there had been lifted. I pulled out a photograph of Marcus from the side table, one where he was smiling while pushing Emma on a swing last summer. "We did it, my son," I whispered. "You protected your babies, and you protected me." 3 months later, I moved into the small house on Birchwood Lane that Marcus had left me. It was perfect. 2 bedrooms, so Emma and Daniel could visit whenever they wanted, a garden where I could plant the flowers I had always wanted, and enough space for the carpentry projects I had started using Marcus's tools. The children adapted better than I had expected. Emma still asked about her mom sometimes, and Daniel occasionally grew pensive when we passed places that reminded him of his old life. But they were thriving in ways I hadn't seen when Juliet was controlling every aspect of their lives. Emma had started art classes and discovered she had a talent for painting. Daniel had joined the school soccer team and made new friends. They were both seeing a counselor to help them process their father's death and the changes in their family, and they were making good progress. Juliet complied with the terms of the will. She moved into an apartment across town and began therapy with a psychologist specializing in control and manipulation behaviors. Once a month, she was allowed a 2-hour supervised visit with the children at a neutral family center. The first few visits had been tense and difficult, but gradually, Juliet was learning to relate to her children without trying to control every moment of the interaction. She still had a long way to go. But for the first time, there was hope that she could become a mother her children deserved to have. As for me, at 63, I was finally living the life I had always wanted, but never thought I could have. I had financial security, a beautiful home, and most importantly, the unconditional love of 2 children who needed me as much as I needed them. Marcus had found a way to protect us all, even after death. He had turned what could have been the destruction of our family into an opportunity to heal and grow. Every night before I went to sleep, I would look at the picture of Marcus on my nightstand and thank him for giving me the chance to be, not just a grandmother, but a true mother to his children. "I love you, my son," I would whisper in the dark, "and I promise I will take care of them with everything I have." And for the first time in years, when I laid my head on the pillow, I slept in peace, knowing I had won the most important battle of my life, the battle for my family, my dignity, and my future. Marcus had been right. I was no longer vulnerable, I was no longer helpless, and I was definitely no longer alone.